Mr. Miller, I have you on mute in my office. Sorry.
Got me?
Yes, sir.
All right. And we are recording. So
Second time's the charm.
that's right. Just too bad. The first one was so good.
No.
Yeah, for those of you who just joining us, we didn't have a record button on session 1.
All right. We got a couple people in the waiting room. You letting them in?
Yes, sir. I was able to make Ms. Hebel a co-host, so we'll help monitor that since you have the main computer.
Gotcha. All right, we'll give everybody a couple more minutes to jump on in before we start, if you guys are good with that.
Miller,
Hey, Coach Party, how are you, sir?
I'm good. I'm good. I can't make my camera work for some reason for this session.
I was about to say you need to turn your camera on.
Well, it's on. It's just not. It's worked just fine for all the rest of them.
How are you?
Hey, it'll be giving you guys a break. What can I say?
Hey, I was about to say something, but I decided to hold back. But
Oh,
you jumped in there.
yeah.
I saw some good pictures of you guys that y'all went to Baum Stadium here recently, didn't y'all?
Oh, we did. We did.
Yeah, it's good to see.
Everything was great except the last ball. Well, we were, I guess Sunday night they lost, and on the way home, we hit a deer, tore up Heather's car.
Oh,
Luckily,
wow.
we had kids old enough to drive to come get us.
Hey, that's dangerous anytime you hit a deer.
Yeah, we just, we Bo and Luke duked it, jumped right over it.
Hey, memories.
We
You'll
were only,
live forever.
it'll definitely be a memory. Hey, wait a minute, it says start my video now.
There you are. I sent you another invite for you to
Well,
start your
thank you.
video.
Looking good. You got that flag up in the background.
There we go.
Hey, I think we need to censor that. That's vulgar and or obscene.
You know you liked it here.
Got some good people over in Bologna.
We
Some of my favorite people in the world over there.
Well, you were some of our favorite too. So
I appreciate that.
it was I'm sure we've tried to lure you back, but now that you're in the land of milk and honey, you probably won't ever go.
We have to refer to this place as the land of milk and honey more often. I like it.
Well, if you have any more Miller stories, that would be awesome that we could use. So it's all about SEL and making relationships. So share away.
I think I was on my best behavior when I was at Bologna.
That's the thing about it. He's so squeaky clean. You can't really come up with anything on him.
There you
Really?
go. You got it. There you have it.
I even knew the coaches he ran around with. If he was going to be bad, he would have been bad then.
That's right. I was the positive influence on those guys. I was the glue that held it together. Well, all right. You guys ready to start? I've got 2:06. Of course, if anybody jumps in late, we can let them in. So this session is on SEL and the implementation through collaboration, implementing SEL with fidelity across our secondary campus and really across the district. We got into so much in the first session, it branched out beyond our buildings. And so one thing that we're going to do, we're going to go through a lot of the resources and activities and tools that we use here at the junior high level and at the high school level. And hopefully you guys who are participating can take something back with you and implement, use in your buildings or at your school to help your kids and your teachers. So as an administrator, the biggest thing we can do is to provide time for our SEL teams to plan, to get into classrooms, to meet with kids one-on-one, just to determine the needs and to better plan the activities to make it applicable to what they're dealing with or what they may need at that time during the school year, that time in their life. So I'm going to introduce our team real quick, and then we'll jump into talking about some of the things that we do. First is Kim Hebel. She works with our high school counselors. Nakina Porter, she's one of our high school assistant principals. And then Miss Millie Engler, she's our junior high counselor. And I see Dr. Benish is also here. Dr. Benish shared a wonderful session this morning, and we're just kind of piggybacking off of that. So Dr. Benish has been a wonderful addition to Greenbrier, and that absolutely helped us through guiding us to make sure we are using SEL and implementing it with fidelity here across the district. So thank you, Dr. Benish. So if you want to, ladies, Miss Hebel, I don't remember who started earlier, so either you or Miss Engler, if one of you guys want to start and just kind of talk about what the activities that you guys use and utilize on your specific campus, and we can go from there. And those of you participating and listening in, if at any point you have questions, feel free to ask, or you can type them into the chat box and we'll answer them. We want this to be as beneficial to you guys as possible.
Okay, I can start. Kim Hebel, one of the counselors at the high school, and not even sure how we started last time, but we're just going to jump in and kind of start telling you what we do at the high school and the junior high.
Yeah, we'll just chime in. That's how we roll here. Make sure you can see our screen though. I've shared our handout that you'll have access to that has connective links to the samples of things that we did, so that you can kind of take it and tweak it back on your campus. So give me a thumbs up if you guys can see my screen that's on there. I know I'm on the screen like 3 times. Awesome.
I can see it.
Logged in a couple of times here.
Okay, we did try to provide you with just the links and the samples. I'm sure we stole some of the information and tweaked it to make it our own. We've created some, we've combined some different things to make it our own. So please feel free to do that as well. If you make it better, please share it back with us. We would love to see it. But at the high school, oh, sorry, I'll back up a little bit. Dr. Nish shared about what we did at the district level this morning. So if you saw that, you're going to see kind of a lot of how we're doing it in the building and making it work at the building levels in this session that she talked about this morning. So at the high school, we have an SEL team that meets at least monthly, sometimes multiple times during the month. And we have created this year our own curriculum for SEL. And that was based off of a team approach to finding our areas that we were doing a good job in already, and where we had some weak areas that needed some more direct instruction in those particular areas to cover. And so when we did that, we started looking, and we didn't really have a curriculum for the secondary level. So we made one based around those areas. And it looks a little different at the junior high than it does at the high school. So I'm gonna tell you about the high school, and then Miss Engler can tell you about the junior high. At the high school, we cover those areas of weakness through our Panther Pathways time. And that is every day. They have about a 30-minute window with one of their teachers in small groups. And they have a selection of different.
You mean click on
Yeah,
it?
you can.
Okay.
Not even sure which one I pulled up. Let's see.
That you guys.
Yes, February 1st. Okay, we were talking about diversity. And in there you'll see, and we had an ongoing document. This is just a snippet, 1 day worth of material, but it has the topic, it has the goals for the day. It had, that week we were working on the kindness challenge. It had some different options for activities because our teaching staff wanted options. They didn't want everyone to have to do exactly the same thing. So we gave them multiple things they could do around a central topic. And so you'll see those. And on Mondays, we said, that's the day you need to focus on it. If it takes more than Monday, great. Continue that out, whatever you need to do. But that was your focus area for the day. This one didn't have a Renaissance video from Jostens tied to it. A lot of ours do. Our kids connected really well with that. And then at the bottom, you saw there was a little teacher tip there for their own SEL. So that's kind of what our lessons look like. Sometimes there was a video introduction from us, one of the counselors, sometimes it was Jostens. They were all a little bit different, but we kind of created our own this year. Next year, we have a little different, but that's what we did at the high school for our basic instruction.
And for like the junior high level, you know, you've got to meet your educators where their comfortable level is as well, since we're asking them to kind of branch out of their comfort zone and take on some where primarily would be considered the counselor's role with SEL, even though it's everybody's role. Our teachers, we started out, they wanted a script to kind of read from. We do ours during advisory. So ours is every Monday. So we have Mental Health Monday every week. And they originally wanted a script. When I polled them the next time, I gave them a different format of the lesson, polled them to see which one they liked. So they had some input on how they wanted to receive the lessons, but every Monday I provided a lesson and they started wanting more presentations with snippets of me modeling or introducing the material. And then I purposely put in discussions because both campuses really wanted the relationship piece to be built there, to where teachers and students, it wasn't just, oh, well, the counselor will handle that, or oh, the principal will handle that. Everybody handles it because it's not just their students or our students or my students, it's our students. And so we even talked about during the little break, I loved being in the hallway and hearing kids who were not scheduled for that teacher calling them by name. That means that teacher stepped out to make sure those kids knew who they were. I loved being in the hallway and the kids knowing my name as the counselor and that who I represent. And they loved it in turn, me calling them by their name. But we did Mental Health Mondays. I'm trying to find it. Help me if I find it.
It's right there. It's right there. Very top.
Right there. Oh.
Yeah.
Oh, it helps if I know my own stuff. So we did a week's worth of information for our teachers. That way they could just click on it. And so administrators and counselors developed our advisory activities for the teachers to implement in the classroom. We didn't want to add anything else to their plate. They have a lot. So like one of them was about perspective. So I'll just click on it. So all they had to do was click. I provided everything else every Monday for them. I include our mindset and behaviors from ASCA, as well as how the activity or the information that I'm going to provide ties into Guide for Life that we're all using. Then I embedded a video. So you're always going to see the counselor introduce it. And in that introduction, I usually give them some essential questions to think about while they're doing the activities, as well as setting up the behavioral expectations. You know, if I'm asking teachers to provide, you know, SEL lessons, and we did this throughout the whole school, you know, you set the stage for it. That this is going to be protected, respected space that everyone, you know, should feel free and safe to share in. That's the environment you want to have and to set in your advisory or your Panther pathways. If you notice, we had a perspective podcast. We'll talk about podcasts in a moment, but we do record those once a month based on our words. And then there's follow-up activities that go along with that. And if you notice, it kind of gives them some little things to do in there. So it makes it interactive for teachers as well. That Perspecticles, before we adopted our new curriculum, we're going to start next year, which is Character Strong. They do offer some free samples, and Perspecticles was a video that shows students' perspectives of others. So it shows a typical teenager going through a day, behaving the way they typically do. And then they put these special glasses on that allows them to see what's happening behind the scenes with people, and it gives them that empathy component that, you know, kids have to learn and be taught. And then there's discussion questions that are always going to follow it. That's how we ensure that they're paying attention to the things you're providing for them. And then teachers can just go on. There's always going to be an activity, and then there's usually going to be a challenge that kind of goes with it. So that's kind of our SEL. The same thing with diversity was one of our weeks. The kids really gave a lot of feedback on this one, as far as, because after so many sessions, I sent out a form to the kids to ask them how effective they felt the lessons were, because I want them to get something out of it as well as the teachers. So I usually do send out forms to not just the adults, but also to kids. I want them to have some input in what they want. I also do a student needs assessment that kind of helps guide these lessons that we're doing. But there's some of our essential questions, and it just reminds teachers, take the time to discuss those. Why is it important? Discuss, at our age level, cliques are big, stereotypes, combating those. And then again, there's that counselor introduction. And then here's our activity. It was all about fingerprinting and how unique they are to each individual. And then you tied that back to diversity. The fact that everybody has a unique fingerprint proves that each person is meant to be different. So it just kind of goes through that. And the kids really liked that visual that kind of went with it, especially at our age level. They've got to have an activity to do that's going to kind of draw them in and make them more invested in it. But that's how we did our SELs, and we did it every week. And then I did my best last year and this year to try to get to the classrooms once a month. Through core classes, and that that involves me working with my administrator and saying, hey, I would like to interrupt some instruction time to go into the classroom. And Mr. Miller's always been great to say, okay, go for that. I'd love for you to be able to do that. And so coordinating that with teachers, saying, okay, social studies, I'm going to give you about 25 to 30 minutes on these days for me to be with your kids. And so they don't really leave the room, but that gives them some opportunity to kind of, decompress. It gives them some time back, gives them some time for planning, but then gives me some class time to meet those needs of the kids where they are and be able to read the room and the body language and, take live questions with them. So I tried to alternate that, social studies may be September, English may be November, and so on, until I went through and tried to do a rotation between the course to get into the classroom and meet every student at that point for a specific SEL whole group. And then we did small groups and individual lessons that needed to be more tuned in and honed in on specific needs for specific kids.
One thing I forgot to mention on ours is we continually changed our plans throughout the whole year. We were normally about a month out in advance having our curriculum planned out, because we constantly were asking the staff and the students what they needed or what they wanted, because they were very adamant that they wanted some say in what was being distributed. And so we planned that out about a month in advance. And so made some people a little nervous, but we got it out there so that it was relevant to what was going on in the building at the time. And that also we really get into those weekly check-ins.
Okay.
On Fridays, in that same advisory time or same Panther Pathways, what we called it at the high school, we did a Friday check-in, and that's when those advisory teachers would meet individually with those kids during that time and have them complete this little check-in sheet and a little Google form. And it just checked in with the kids. How are you doing emotionally? What were the highs, the lows? And they also looked at their hack accounts, at their grades, just an individual, really quick check. And that way those teachers could notify the counselors or flag those students immediately, pretty much, who needed additional follow-up. So that really helped us out, and they could let us know, hey, you need to check on Billy, or Susie's having a rough day, or whatever, so that we could follow up really quickly. So the teachers really seemed to like the check-ins too.
We did the check-ins, as well as both campuses, I think, have an electronic referral form that students can use, parents can use, teachers can use. But what I liked about the check-ins, it didn't just focus on the negative. It pushed them to kind of find a victory for that week as well. So, that's all about the changing of the mindset. When we're talking about trauma and talking about students that are needing more one-on-one service or group services, a lot of times it's just a focus on the negative, and you try to change that focus to finding some victory or some positive within that. But we also extended these check-ins to our teachers. So during PLCs, they were shared a very similar link that had some of the same questions on it. Some of the first things, they were a little hesitant at first to fill them out because, sometimes we don't always want our administrator to know we're struggling in an area, because that's just not the norm. And this year we tried to break that stigma that went with, a mental health and mental health awareness and supporting one another, to where it was no more a feeling of I gotcha on this, but more of what barriers are in your way that we can possibly remove so that everyone can have success, was how we approached it in our building. And so, just reassuring them, I was reading them. If it was a concern that I felt administrators needed to know, I'd come to you first and say, hey, do you mind if I share? And then a lot of times they would say no, because our job as a counselor is not just to advocate for kids, but to also advocate for the adults in our building and to support them. Not only kids with SEL, but our adults with SEL as well. So that was just one component that we did collaboratively with administration, was, hey, we got to help our teachers too. They've been through trauma, and just to kind of uplift them so that they can push through and uplift our kids so that we can have the best year possible with that. So we had to make some little changes here and there, just in how we interacted with one another through this process too.
And when we started this, we didn't just jump in and start throwing lessons at the teachers and the kids, or even just the staff in training. We spent about a month and a half of get to know you activities, building relationship activities, coming together, safe zones, just trying to make the students and the staff really feel like families and little communities, so that they were safe jumping into these deeper conversations. So you have to spend some time preparing for that.
Yes. A lot of front loading had to
Yes.
happen during summer, a lot of summer conversations. What can we do to make this successful? Because if you think about it, we are asking teachers who this may not be their area of expertise, kind of get out of their comfort zone. If we're doing that, we got to provide them the tools to do that and do it effectively. Otherwise, there may be some resistance, or it may not be as effective as in your mind you want it to be. So you've got to make sure your staff is comfortable and confident with what they're being asked to do. And if not, they always know, hey, I can ask the counselor, or I can ask the administrators to come in and model this, or to do this, or to speak with the student, because I don't feel comfortable. I know my limitations and I don't feel comfortable. So I know that I've got a person too. We're asking them to be the person for the students. Well, they got to have a person too. And I think that was huge on how beneficial and effective our SEL was in all of our buildings, is that they knew they had backup. They had a backup plan. They had people.
And it was district wide. It wasn't just a high school thing, or just a junior high thing, or just a secondary thing. It was district wide. We're going to focus on the social and emotional needs of our students and staff. I think that was huge.
Another one of the ways at the high school that we did that was in our PLC team meetings. We also spent time with the teachers and walking them through some specific lessons on things and modeling that, and then having them also go through it, so that, just like Ms. Engler was talking about, it gives them the tools that they need if they weren't as comfortable doing some of those lessons, so that they could not only see us doing it, but then they also perform some of those things in the team meetings as well, and went through them. So, one of the things that also, looking at some things front loading that was done, was they did a lot of work, and by they, I mean counselors, administrators, did a lot of work with the Guide for Life and crosswalking a lot of what we did at the high school, at secondary, even at the elementary, but also community wide. So they spent a lot of time, working with a lot of different people to make sure that we were meeting all of those needs.
And I think that was something huge, talking about community. It's amazing when we found kind of our areas of focus that we were going to do each month with the Guide for Life. Just designing a word of the month. Typically in elementary, you have that because that's what you make your, Friday event spectacular edutainer moments out there, and you celebrate the kids for show and reflection, during your spirit days, but you don't really see that a lot in secondary. And we decided we were going to break that mold, and it was going to be district wide. And just sending out something like this to our banks and our restaurants, anyone who had a marquee, and driving through the center of town, seeing this word reflection come up on the bank and what it looks like and how it can support social emotional learning. Just seeing that through Greenbrier meant that everyone had everybody's best interest at heart. And then like, this is a community event. And that to me was huge, talking about your partnerships. The one thing we've been very blessed here in our community is they want our kids and our families and our students and our schools to be successful. And anytime we've ever asked for anything, even the smallest of things, it usually is given back tenfold. Without even questioning. I mean, we can ask for 10 meals and we'll get 50. And that just speaks volumes to our community leaders, our district leaders, our administrators in the buildings. I'm gonna be honest, whatever idea that like I come up with for my building, Mr. Miller has always been going, sure, do that. Even if the crazy ones, like let's have a silly day or something. He's been for any of that, just to give back to the kids, to know, we're here more than just for the content. We're here for the whole child, and everybody belongs to everybody.
And so kind of to piggyback off that, so approaching SEL this year for it to be successful, we had to approach it just as we approach academics, making sure we're all held accountable. We're all approaching it together. It's not just one person in the building. It's not just the counselor's responsibility to make sure we're checking in on our kids and making sure they feel heard. Or it's not just the counselor's responsibility to make sure that is being taken care of for our teachers, but it's it's a collective response and a collective responsibility to make sure it's being done with fidelity. So that's whole PLC mindset, just like we take for academics, we also take that for SEL as well, and that ensures the success of these programs and these tools and resources that we're sharing today.
And I also think, going into that about the fidelity with it, the other things that we may not have a link to that's on here, like assist training, youth mental health, first aid, those are extra tools that we provided our faculty with in order to be able to identify the signs and the signals for our students who may not have been vocal with it, in order to better serve them for those particular mental health needs. Reading their body language, those nonverbal cues, in order to say, how can I help you? Kids that are, maybe you've seen a change in their grades, what barriers in your way? It changed the way we communicated with them, when it came to talking about grades. I want you to be successful. We want you to be successful. What barriers are in your way that we could possibly remove? Because I notice you're acting differently. Hearing those conversations coming from teachers meant they truly knew their kids. And that came with this front loading and giving those extra tools. And I think our faculty definitely shared gratitude for having those extra trainings for the youth mental health, for the safe talk. And there's more safe talk and assist trainings happening for our teachers. And then the high school, you guys talk about your students going through safe talk.
We did have a training where, well, first of all, we have a Lifesavers Club, and that club was born out of the fact that we actually lost a high school student to suicide, and we had students that became very aware of others around them that might be facing similar situations. And there was an interest there to form a club and to help prevent that from happening again. So that was where the Lifesavers was came from. And then out of that, several of those students even decided to want to be trained in the Safe Talk training. And part of that is helping them identify some of those, what do you call them? Just,
Kind of signs and.
yeah, some of the
signals, yeah.
signs of worry that they might be facing something that is beyond their own help. So the students that were trained that, if they answer certain questions, then they need to try to get those kiddos to an adult that could help them. And, it teaches them and adults, it's not just the kids that I was referring to when we train the students, it teaches them how to ask that hard question of, are you thinking of suicide? And that's a difficult question to ask, especially your peers. So it's getting them involved in that. And then, even a step further is the assist training. I know that Mr. Miller has been through that, and our counselors did have as well. So, it's just continuing that social emotional development and trying to help them, give them tools necessary when they see that someone is not where they need to be.
I think in addition to those, just warning signs that, we've all heard 100 times before, the teachers have sat through the PD every year, but I think it just, anytime they can get extra training, it's just going to give them a little bit more confidence so that when they have that gut feeling that something's not quite right, they can go ahead and they'll be confident enough to take that next step and just ask that question, because it is a very hard question to ask. And that's helping our kids do the same thing. Not only are they noticing something's different, but then giving them the skills and the confidence to go ahead and do something about that feeling they have.
Right.
And I think what makes the question so difficult is the answer that could possibly come. And with these trainings, you're provided with what if they say yes,
Right. Exactly.
what your next steps can be as the classroom teacher, as the administrator, as the counselor. It puts you in the right path to help them, because I'm going to be honest, and Dr. Benish, y'all chime in if you want to. Kids read us, and they read us real well. And the one thing that they read is if they've got a hard topic that they're dealing with or a struggle they're dealing with that's very difficult, they're going to read you to know if you can handle the answer or not. So, we reminded our staff quite a bit in the front loading in. It's like chess. You have to think several steps ahead. If I'm about to ask this question, what if they give me this answer? What am I going to say? And so in thinking that, we also think about our nonverbal cues. Well, if I gasp or make a noise or I grimace or I start crying, that tells that kid right there, they can't handle it. I'm not going to be able to go to them. Number one, they may love you so much they don't want to hurt you by telling you the answer. Or, they're not ready to hear my answer for that. So just prepping yourself and knowing where you are through these tools helps you to kind of, I guess, keep a straight face, but with compassion when a kid is hurting and doesn't know how to tell you they're hurting. Because sometimes it may not be, this is what's happened to me. It may be a behavior issue. And out of talking with them during that moment of the behavior issue, you find out that there's an underlying issue that's causing that. And they're seeking help for something, but they're reading your behavior to know whether you can handle it or not. Any of the parents in the room, that. Sometimes our kids don't always share with us because, well, if mom cries when I talk about that stuff, mom can't handle that and I don't want to hurt her heart. So I'm not going to share that with her. Our kids do the same thing at school. So I think, being able to have our teachers prepped enough through these trainings that they think ahead of what are my next steps going to be, that I can be an active listener and remain kind of calm during that situation and get them the help they need. That's, I think, very important for our kids, and it helps build the relationship.
Another
So-
training, oh, sorry.
type thing with AMI. We always made it a point to keep SEL on the front burner as far as what we wanted the kids to have access to and what we wanted them to get out of the lesson. So it was always a major part of the learning, regardless of whether we were on site or if we were AMI. Miss England, do you want to talk a little bit about what that looked like whenever we would go to an AMI or a virtual type setting?
Yes, so if we did AMI, it was a collaboration between campuses because that activity was going to be shared out by secondary. So for like this one right here for advocacy, that was our word for that month. You're seeing myself, the rubric, and can be used by their English teacher on, how well they can effectively write a paragraph or write an essay. But we use scenarios. So if they paid attention and practiced the SEL lesson with us, then they have the ability to effectively answer the scenarios. So like for the first one, Jackie knows that she has a problem if she does not sit towards the front of the room. Her teacher is given a seat at the back of the room and it's difficult for her to see. How does she advocate for herself in a mature, socially acceptable way? So just reading their responses, and all secondary had access to the form once the kids submitted their answers. And it just took them through, and that let us know if they truly understood what we were trying to portray to them or not. And so we had those each time, and then we had supplemental information that attached. That's what I really like about it. And Dr. Benish has allowed us to have, monthly counselor meetings to where we can collaborate with one another across secondary. And that only happens when our administrators are on board and allow us that time to be able to do that. Meet from 1:30 to 3:30. And so, because, that may be away from our building. And so it was very wonderful to be able to go, okay, I may be the only counselor in this building, but when I went to that meeting, we could all talk about what our next steps were, what we done successfully, what were our barriers in the way, how, same thing with success fair and deciding who's going to that, being able to break down that data and decipher the most impactful way we could utilize that, and then coming back to our buildings and debriefing principals on things that needed to, go building wide for us, I think was very.
There was always at least one or two SEL activities on board that they could choose to complete for their assignment for that day. So that was just one option that we kept our SEL in there. But I was actually going to really talk about last summer and last spring when we had COVID.
Oh, yes.
And before we had Character Strong as our curriculum, which we'll have for next year, we used the 30-day kindness challenge with our students. I think it's close. There it is. And what they completed on the kindness challenge, and we would post that to our social media. We would show them in our Google Hangouts we did with the counselors. And so we very much kept in contact with those kids and kept that SEL curriculum going even before that was really a focus, because that happened
Every Friday.
Yeah, every
Every
Friday. we were doing
Friday.
those weekly Zooms.
Yes, and it's in junior high, because I knew it was sometimes a struggle, because I tried to stagger mine for when I knew teachers were doing. So some of mine were early morning sessions. So it would be breakfast with the counselor. We'd come in our jammies. It was bring your pets, just getting those little things, since they were in their home and their pets were running in there anyway. I knew that was another connection, because my dog wanted to sit right in my lap and watch the screen too when I was at home. And so it was over the stove, and it was breakfast time, and we were talking about cooking and doing something nice for your family. And I said, you guys are to an age. So I remember one morning we decided we were all going to make scrambled eggs and talk about how you make that. And how is this going to help with, cooking of your parent at home? Well, how do you think the gratitude portion of it? But it was something I knew that they could fix themselves because of their age, but also do something to give back to somebody else in the house. And then they got to see real life. They got to see my kid running around, and setting the fire alarm off at one time during a Zoom. And I was like, fire drill, you had to make it light and funny because it was COVID and it was, brought a darkness to our kids. And, they wanted to know that everybody was human too, including their counselor.
So if you haven't done the 30-day challenge, that's definitely
Oh,
an
yes.
easy way to slide that in. And it was very beneficial to our kids. Our kids really enjoyed it.
Yeah, and it's geared towards them. So like one of them was send a silly selfie to at least 5 family members and tell them it was just to give them a good laugh.
Yeah.
And one was to send a sentimental selfie and to someone you cared about and tell them why you care about them. Things like that, they're already tech savvy anyway, that it was doable, it was COVID friendly, and it got them reaching out and caring about others as well. But it was good, and it's age appropriate
Yes.
for our kids to where they wanted to do it. Like that, my kids felt independent fixing breakfast for everybody. Now, we didn't say it was good, but mom and dad ate it. And so like they joined us in a session too. Might have had little eggshells, but we all ate it. So I think that was beneficial as well. So not just during AMI, but we felt sometimes, we worried about those kiddos at home that we weren't going to physically see. So we tried to make it a very conscientious effort with administrators and counselors and teachers, our digital teachers, having those Zoom sessions, going on home visits just to see them, just standing in the yard even, so that we could put our eyes on them and know that they were okay, was huge. And, that also takes time, and it takes a conscious effort for admin and counselors and others to be able to do that as well. But the benefits outweigh that. And I think that was huge for our kids, still feeling connected to school, even though they may not have been on site.
Have we talked about our staff support yet?
We have not.
We definitely, SEL is not just for our
Yeah.
students. It's a big focus for us to take care of our staff as well, because as counselors, cost you 4 notebooks.
I
That's
bet
it.
they have them in their school supply.
Probably do. Go steal them from the counselor's office. They have a notebook.
Yeah.
We did it with 4 notebooks because we had 3 counselors and an intern.
We did it with 2 because we have 1 counselor.
However big your staff is, you can do it. Take a notebook, and the instructions are there, and you just give the little instructions, tape it to the front page. Whoever starts the notebook writes an encouraging message, a thank you message, you're doing a great job, I noticed, whatever. Write a personal message to someone, put it in their mailbox. That person gets the notebook, they read their message, they have a great day. They write a message to somebody else, they paperclip theirs to the instructions. They put it in the next mailbox, and you just pass that notebook. Huge impact in our building. Everybody needs to pick me up from time to time. Made a huge difference, cost us nothing. A little bit of time to write those messages.
And they're used to us counselors being that positive ray of sunshine. You're doing fabulous. Everybody's together. But to hear it more meaningful from your coworker or a cohort in your department, or someone maybe not even in your department writing something positive about you and how much you impacted their learning and how much you were there for them, it is huge. And so, I mean, our staff's a little competitive though at the junior high. We had to set a time limit because they wanted to see who could get it back the fastest turnaround rate for the 2. So someone added in on my instructions, you have 24 hours to complete your task. And then it was on like Donkey Kong to try to get your notebook in the box before the next person came in the following morning to see who had done it. And so it got real competitive, and those notebooks were just flying around everywhere. It was awesome.
Ours was not quite that competitive. We actually took ours up 3 times during the year to make sure that they were moving. So maybe the 24-hour thing was a good idea. We'll probably do that next time. And then at the end of the year, we gathered those notebooks, tore out all the messages, gathered them up by person, and gave those individual messages to each person. So you got a whole little folder with all of your inspiring messages. So that was one way we support the staff, just trying to give them something good.
Other ways, we did room service cards to where they had a choice of a beverage, chocolate or chip, and they put that out on Wednesdays. just hung it on their door, and on Fridays, the room service cart rolled around and helped distribute that, as well as even last year, once a month, doing just something special for the teachers. Even a bottle of water during the PLC meeting time with an inspirational quote of, thinking about, water's replenishing, just like you replenish our students and their love of learning. Little inspiration that goes along with it. They could just drop by and, grab a cup before they went, with a little quirky saying along with it. Mr. Miller loves those. I know he does.
I do. I look forward to
And
those.
you look forward to those days.
Yes, I
And
do.
so little things like that just help, a breakfast bar, drop by, those are not that expensive, and they come in bulk at Sam's. Doing that once a month has big payoff, because it, lets your staff know that you're encouraging them as well as helping them. And then in Mr. Miller's weekly newsletter, there was always a counseling corner. He allowed me to be kind of part of that. So even though he gave out, information, he always did a shout out. I took our student pictures out. So where it says insert image there, I protected our kids. So you'd insert your own image there. Some reminders and stuff for staff, but down in the counseling corner, I may have passed it. All right, here. So whoops. Help tips, and then I always tried to give some type of encouragement. And then there's our prescription card that we would send out every once in a while, but regularly, and intentional scheduling of a gratitude attitude. So at least 2 times the month, and of course there was 99 refills on it. So they would just kind of get those every once in a while. And some of their prescription cards would say, within this week, you need to do a self-care day, something just for you, even if it's 10 minutes. And then they would be given examples of what they could do within 10 minutes, whether it be, stretching, yoga, a walk, listening to your favorite song, singing at the top of your lungs, that kind of stuff. This time we focused around gratitude. So just going through that, and then, hearing from our parents and some of their struggles, we started putting them in our weekly student newsletter that went out. So working with the assistant principal on those, sending out tips for our kids, and these are posted on our website. So here's the counseling corner, mental habits that support lifelong learning. I always tried to find some type of catchy graphic that would talk, bring parents' attention to that, so that they had something to kind of look for, even some of those signs and symptoms for their kids on there as well. And then I think this is here's our coffee bar. Everyone loves coffee or hot tea or cocoa. I did this around kind of our November-ish kind of fall time. So this is the kind of things they would see in the lounge. Just the perfect blend. Words cannot express how much we appreciate all that you do. Please enjoy a cup of gratitude. So those were little things that we would put out for them. And then I always had reminders about, adopting a Thanksgiving basket, asking them for extra. So doing those little things kind of help support them. And then we used GroupMe a lot, especially towards the end of the year. I tried to send something at least every other day on GroupMe. I just didn't blast GroupMe with it, but I wanted it to be on those days where I kind of read the building, or even administrators and I would talk saying, hey, there's kind of a lull. We're kind of slowing down. I'm about to do something in GroupMe, and I always got, well, go ahead. And so little things, reminders of your why, just kind of helping them, uplift them during this time to where they knew they weren't alone. And we knew it was the end of the year. We know that everybody's stressed, and reminding them to sustain those connections. Can you think of anything else, Mr. Miller, that we kind of did to help support the SEL of our staff?
No, at this point, if you guys have questions about anything that's been covered, feel free to ask.
It's a lot, yeah.
Of course, there are things we hope that you can use that we're using, but it doesn't have to look the exact same way it looks here once you implement it into your your setting. But there was a lot of time, and I think Ms. Hebel may have mentioned this, or Ms. Engler may have mentioned this earlier, but the importance of securing the time and putting in the time on the front end to make sure the teachers feel equipped to handle this is very important, and it's well worth the time on the front end. Of course, we had asked our teachers to make this a focus as educators and continue to be emphasized each year as a part of best practices for kids, and in terms of building relationships and sustaining those relationships. So one thing I don't think you guys really hit on a lot of, do you want to talk about the Good Morning Grief session a little bit?
Want to take that one?
Sure.
Okay. Well, we did have a student that died by suicide this year. And so that led to a very dark place for a lot of our students that were here still. And so Dr. Bernish secured a partnership with Arkansas Children's Hospital and Greg Adams, who does the Good Morning program, and got him to come to our campus and meet with that initial group of students that were directly affected by that suicide and that tragedy we had here on campus. And we still had interest in that group, and we still had a need for that group. And so she got him to come back, and we had a small group of students from the junior high and the high school that met together along with all the district counselors. And we had a session, and he provided not just a really personal experience, but he gave them tips and strategies of how to get through the grieving process. It wasn't just students who had lost a parent or lost a grandparent. It included people that had been abandoned by a parent or had lost a pet or just felt grief in general. And so it was about a 2.5 hour session. And it was really impactful for those students, and the counselors were there to learn so that we can continue on with that program, and to give support to those students who were in the room who may need to step out to color a food coloring in this bottle of water. Well, by the time they finished talking, the water is black. There's no way to see through it. And then he switched and they started talking. He took the bottle of water that was black and he's holding it in his hand. He's walking around and they're talking about what are ways to get over or to get through the grieving process. And every time they would give him a new strategy, talking about the person that's gone, or listening to music, or exercising, or whatever their strategy was, being around other people, whatever, he would put a drop of whatever this other liquid was in the water. And when you finished talking, the water was almost clear, not quite, not perfectly clear like it was before, but you could see through the water. And it was a very powerful visual for those students, where that death or that loss has changed you, but you can get through it. And that impacted me the first time I saw the training several years ago. And Ms. Engler was sharing how impactful it was to her students. They continue to talk about it with their parents even.
My students talked about it on the bus ride back to the junior high. And then I followed up with their parents that evening, saying, hey, thank you for letting them come today. I hope they come home and talk about it with you. And by the following morning, I had several messages from parents and texts saying they talked about it nonstop at dinner. They really talked about that visual and how that it can get you in a dark place that you don't see, like you can see through it. But, you know, with help from others, you know, you can heal from it. And so just seeing that, because, you know, we had the sibling of the high school student who died by suicide. And so, you know, it did impact multiple campuses, that event. And, you know, we had to respond in a way. And those parents of the students were very appreciative that we allowed the junior high kids to attend that session, but it was truly beneficial. And then we followed up with telling the parents, you know, that they have that at Children's Hospital, and, you know, they can sign up for sessions there and go as a family. So I feel that if we're going to provide supports for our kids and for our teachers, that, you know, we also need to support and provide resources to our parents as well. And that takes the community working together to get that done too.
In that document, towards the top of it, there's actually several things that we do with our community. I think mentioned earlier was the success fair, and we have different people from the community come and serve there. We have different things given away, clothing, shoes, books. We do have food, toothbrushes, toothpaste, and a lot of times it's members of our community that donated that stuff and then are standing there handing it out to families as they drive through and pick up those resources. Some other things on there, the poverty simulation is something that our community gets involved in. And usually we have members of the community come and represent the specific areas in the poverty simulation. This year, we actually had some of our high school students participate in that. And it just basically puts them through a life of poverty and what that's like, what it's like to lose your home, what it's like to, you know, once you lose your home, not have an address, so you can't go apply for a job. And it's just that kind of continuous circle, and they get to see what that's like. And it definitely was, it wasn't just for him, but anybody that's lost someone to suicide. And so, you know, it's just kind of been that door to the community that we've opened, and kind of to go through those steps of healing. And that the Out of the Darkness Walk showed different statistics related to suicide. And then, you know, as you continue to walk, you start seeing, you know, the brighter side of things and walking and healing from that. And we actually scheduled ours in a morning time. And so when they first started out, it was kind of a little bit darker in the morning. And after they completed their walk, come out in the sunshine, they actually finished. The finish line was on our football field. And when they finished, I mean, the sun was up, it was beautiful. And there was a lot of talking and, you know, just healing in that. So that was another big thing that our community did and pulled together to do. So I say all those things to say that community's been a big part of this, a big part of our SEL. And I feel like just because of that, it is going to mean more, and it's going to, you know, sustain more.
Another big part of our SEL that's listed on the form, there's no links to them really, is the time that's been protected for us. The administrators have allowed several of the counselors, Ms. Engler and I particularly, to be off campus or be tied to Zoom sessions to serve on the Arch Board Lead Counselor Council. Ms. Engler's on the UCA Counselor Board for new counselors coming through that education program. I serve on a Euler board. And so that gives us the opportunity to go and to talk with other counselors from around the district, from around the region and state, to really get a feel for what's the latest and greatest, to get us some new ideas, to share what we're doing here at Greenbrier, to get feedback on that. And that is time that the administrators have allowed us to do that. We couldn't do that without being released to do that. And so that's what those are about. There's no links to put there.
To them as well. So that's huge, that professional connection and bringing back those treasures and giving treasures out across the state as well has been huge. Our SEL podcasts, we do that as well, and they're posted on our website. So that's a partnership too across different campuses. So it's not just the junior high campus, it may be junior high and middle school talking about a particular topic, and it's led by students in the East program. And, you know, we have talking points when we're there. And so those students ask us a series of questions about the particular topic that we're given. And we just kind of have those topics listed out by month. And you just basically sit in a meeting in a Zoom session, and then they record those and post those for parents so they can kind of know, and it's giving back out to the community as well on there. Y'all have any questions so far? I think that's pretty much covered everything. Social media, just making sure that you're transparent with what your goals are so that everyone can help support and participate in it, I think is huge too. And having open communication with your administrators as a counselor and as an administrator, being able to have that working relationship to where, everybody's on the same page. It's what's best for kids. And, if you can get everybody on that same page, it will flourish and I think do wonders for your school, for the culture, for the environment that you have.
Agree, 100%, Millie. All right, well, you guys hope some of these things we've shared with you, you can take back to your buildings. Of course, if you have questions or want to reach out to any of us here at Greenbrier, you can most certainly do that. Whether it be the